Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Oh, we're live. How exciting.
You got to do the normal intro.
Yeah, that's true, because it becomes an actual podcast. So if you're not live streaming, you just think I'm an idiot. But anyway, welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlon. I'm joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And we get to talk about a very exciting, some might say historic football game.
Some might call it historic. Some might call it a drubbing. Some might call it pure domination. Some might call it the worst loss in Middle Tennessee's history. We'll call it historic, though.
Some might call it not good enough. No first quarter points. So
I mean, that's true.
Something to work on.
You just watched the game.
I did just watch the game because
you weren't able to watch it live.
I just got that time machine that I've been saving up for, and what a thrill!
But your reaction to the game was hilarious. Where you just like in the first quarter, you were like, "Oh, they've missed some deep ball." Like just seeing your reaction as you watched the game, like getting live tweets from it because we weren't able to tweet live on text each other live on Saturday. Yeah. It was kind of hilarious watching your reaction to the game.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that soon. Do we want to do a Three Notch'd plug first?
We got to do all things Three Notch'd. You hit us with the Three Notch'd breakdown.
Three Notch'd, they're working with us this fall. It is our favorite brewery in Harrisonburg. They're also in Charlottesville and other locations in Virginia. But visit the Harrisonburg tap room. Sounds like they have some exciting stuff going on this week, which you can see on the bottom of the screen. They've got Oktoberfest beers starting Friday. Every Monday is a Minuteman Monday, so you can get $3 Minuteman pints. So I need to get to Harrisonburg on a Monday because I love those guys. And then Wednesday game nights, $5 flagship pints. So some cool weekly deals that they're running there. I'm sure we'll be there at some point, hopefully a couple times this fall. So check them out.
Yeah, for sure. And as always, Bet Online is a proud sponsor of JMU Sports News Podcast. And Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports contests. Cannot get that word out. And events. With first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and Bennett, even golf. Even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join today and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's promo code BLEAV50. It's right there at the bottom of the screen if you're watching the live stream. If you're listening to the podcast, it's not at the bottom of your screen. Use that promo code to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.
It's where the game starts, folks.
Bada bing, bada boom, baby. And last but not least, we got to do our Patreon plug.
Yep.
Check us out on Patreon. We have slowly but surely adding a lot more content over there. Every single few days, we're adding stuff. We did all of our positional breakdowns last week. Today, up on the Patreon, went up the two major takeaways from Curt Cignetti's Tuesday's press conference. Normally, it's going to be three major takeaways, but this week, all of the focus was on Todd Centeio and what he did. So it was almost like pulling teeth. To try and find two, but we got two takeaways from that. We'll talk about it a little bit in this, but subscribe to our Patreon. Only $10 a month, and that's JMU Sports News on Patreon.
Yes, sir. All right, so let's dive into it. 44-7 over Middle Tennessee. As you mentioned, I have just watched the game, so I've got some fresh takes for you. But I want to start with you.
Hit me.
They win this game in commanding fashion. The spread had gotten down to under a touchdown by the time the game had kicked off. Yep. Surprised by the level of domination?
100%. I remember talking about it every week, how we were like, I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I think at one point when the spread was 7.5, I was saying I'm all over Middle Tennessee because I thought JMU would win this game, but I thought it would be a lot closer. And that came through, I think, in our score predictions that we shared on the roundtable and a lot of other stuff that it's clear we both were wrong, but I was, I think, more wrong on it, where I thought the defense was going to get shredded and the offense was going to play a great game. I'm thoroughly shocked in the best way possible that JMU dominated in the way they did.
You almost got a JMU score correct in your prediction. You had, what, 45-42?
Yeah, I was just
So
off on the Middle Tennessee
you were just a
prediction.
little off on the other side. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was certainly surprised. I think it was an impressive performance, maybe better than I expected on both sides. But I kind of the main thing that really jumped out was like, hey, they're way more athletic at what appears to be every position than Middle Tennessee, which surprised me a little bit. I sort of expected it to be less of an athleticism gap and less of a talent gap. Kind of starting with quarterback, like Centeio sort of looked like a beefier guy. No offense to Chase Cunningham, but he looked kind of like scrawny. Like it just, none of the positions looked like they were at the same level in terms of the athletes.
Did you listen to Cignetti's press conference from yesterday?
I listened. Yeah.
Where he kept mentioning Centeio's weight, like with a smile.
Yeah, he brought up the 220 a lot.
And you just said Centeio looked like a big guy, and it just reminded me that Cignetti was so happy. Like every time he'd say 220, there'd just be this smile that crept onto his face.
He also kind of took some digs in like the Tuesday presser, like minor digs, but he was like, when you play better teams and you can't do that kind of thing. It was like, oh, like he was like, I kind of expected it to be harder, which I think was something fans expected and probably Middle Tennessee fans too. But it just felt really easy throughout, even in the first quarter. So like in the first quarter, they had one drive. I think it was the drive where they ended up having the field goal blocked. But he had
first drive of the game, yeah.
Yeah, he had Thornton open. Centeio did for what would have been a touchdown. He missed him. He overthrew him. He had some passes early that he was missing, some reads he was missing. And then obviously the blocked field goal was pretty sloppy. But they were making mistakes. And then they just, once they stopped making some of those mistakes, they started to score with a little more consistency. So I don't know, really from early on, they just looked like the better team, and it sort of exponentially, looked more like that as the game went on. They just sort of kept building and really turned what was a close game initially into kind of a beatdown.
Were you surprised at all, though, by how dominant the defense was?
I think at first, I especially thought they would struggle a little bit in the secondary. I really liked Jordan Swan. Like Jordan Swan at corner looked a lot faster than I assumed he was or thought he was from watching last year. He just looked like a better player. Surratt was really good, like really good.
Yeah.
Especially at punt returner, he did some really nice things. But like the secondary looked pretty fast, maybe faster than I expected, which was impressive. They were pretty sure with tackling. The linebackers, they talked about all that young talent. They were both really good. And then the defensive line, man, super impressed by the defensive line. I thought they were really good. They're deep, so they have a bunch of guys. But like the one play, it was the Isaac Ukwu sack that made all the highlight packages, where like they try to chop block him. He hurdles the guy and then chases down Cunningham. That was the sort of play that was like, I don't think Middle Tennessee has too many guys that can do that. And like the one guy that sort of killed for them was it Ferguson? It was like Jordan Ferguson or whatever. They're big defensive linemen. And like the one play that stood out from watching him is he got into sort of a shoving match with Zach Horton, a tight end who we'll get into at some point. And they're both going at it on this play that I was rewatching. And Ferguson takes like a big shove and like knocks his helmet off at the end of the play. And Horton didn't react. I thought they were going to get into like a fight. And Ferguson like reached out and gave him a knuckle bump. And I was like, if you're like star defensive lineman is like respecting your tight end for the battle they're going through, it's like not even offensive lineman he's going against. I was like, all right, they're doing something right here when you're listed as your second string tight end is taking on their all conference defensive end. And he's like giving him a knuckle bump as they get into this huge blocking battle. That was a moment that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, that was the defensive line itself was just mind-boggling to me on how much pressure they were able to get. Like the secondary, we've talked at length about the issues that the secondary has, that they're inexperienced, everything like that. But when your pass rush is creating that type of environment for the opposing quarterback in the pocket, it really doesn't matter who you have back on your secondary, because the defensive line is going to get in the head of the quarterback so much. And I mean, whether it was Abi Nwabaku Akonji or it was Jamri Chroma, and I had to pick the two hardest names right off the jump to list them out. But I mean, Ukwu, Carpenter, all of these guys had absolute phenomenal performances, and each one just like did something really impressive throughout the game. And they made the linebackers look great. We'll get into Jalen Walker in a little bit, who led the team in tackles, and it covered up a lot of the issues that the secondary had. And I'm not trying to come at the secondary in any way when I say that. I'm just saying it as like there were questions about the secondary. I think after week 1 they will get a lot better because, like you said, Surratt is really good. Swan was impressive. Austin, the true freshman, was really good with a lot of speed. So I think they will come together and get better each week. But as long as the defensive line is playing so well, I don't know if it necessarily matters as Frank makes his opinion known on the secondary as well.
Shout out to Dogs. Yeah, I was impressed with the defense in general. I thought they were better than I thought they were going to be. So they played really well. I think that's a good sign. Do we want to hit any more player shout outs? Are there any names that I think we hit a bunch of them?
Yeah, we hit a bunch of them, but just real quick, I think we need to go through a few of them. Todd Centeio, historic debut. I think everyone talked about that one at length. What did you take away from Todd's performance?
He's kind of like what we hoped he would be. We talked about like the speed and the mobility, and then the arm strength and the ability to be more efficient this year than he was at Colorado State. He's 9 touchdowns away from matching his passing touchdown total last year, and he's got 10 games to do it. So I like his chances after throwing 6 in the first one. He was awesome, and he ran really well, especially later in the game. But he had some early runs that were nice. But the one touchdown pass where he was like in the pocket, eluded a couple guys, kept his eyes downfield, and hit Thornton for like a 40-yard touchdown pass was unbelievably good, and one that really stood out, obviously, because it was a deep touchdown pass. But he made a couple moves in the pocket there. And I felt like in the first quarter, there were a couple times where he like didn't see anything. It was like, all right, I'm running. Where he seemed like kind of jittery early and nervous, even though he's an older guy. I think he tweeted today that it was like his 24th birthday or something. So he's an older guy, but I think he's still a little nervous in the first game and had some of those week 1 jitters. But as he settled down, it felt like he was more willing to scramble, but look to still throw the ball as opposed to just take off and run. I think there's like some Ben DiNucci there, where I think he's probably going to have some mistakes this year where he scrambles and tries to make a play and it doesn't work out for him. But he's also someone that I like having those skill sets with this coaching staff more than I did with like the Mike Houston, Donnie Kirkpatrick coaching staff. So I feel like they're going to make him efficient, even though he seems like he could have some of that like gunslinging ability. Yeah.
Cignetti talked about in his press conference where he loved coming into this season. What he loved the most about Centeio was his experience. He's a 6-year starter. Colorado State, I think he either finished or was about to finish his MBA, like all of that type of coach speak about experience. But then he did mention how in the beginning, especially the first quarter, especially the first couple of drives, he ran when he had open guys. He missed open guys. But then he settled down and you saw him absolutely tear apart that Middle Tennessee defense, 287 yards. As you see on the screen, 6 touchdowns, 64% completion percentage. Can I make a really, really brash thing? Can I say a really bold prediction that will probably bite me in the butt, but can I say it?
Yes.
Based off of that performance, and I expect it to just maintain, if not get a little bit better throughout the season as he gets more used to this offense and so on and so forth. Will he be the best quarterback since Vad Lee? I think he might.
He's definitely got the skills to do some special things. When you say that he'll get better throughout the year, I assume you mean just in terms of how you view his performance.
Yeah, I don't mean statistically where every week he's going to add another touchdown. He's going to finish with 15 touchdowns in a game by the end of the week. What I mean is he'll be more consistent in the pocket. He'll feel more safe, I guess. The O-line will get better. They'll protect him better. He'll be more consistent. He'll be more accurate. He'll hit the passes he missed, and he'll be able to kind of be better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch him play the rest of the season. I think it's what maybe the biggest takeaway for me from this entire game is like I don't want to say it was like pessimism, but I had some questions and doubts about this season. Like I was like, I'm very excited that JMU's in the Sun Belt. I'm excited that the schedule is cool, but like they might win 4 games. And after watching that game, I'm much closer to thinking they're going to win like 9 games. Like I know that you shouldn't like, and we'll talk about this later, shouldn't totally put all this stock into one game. But there's this idea over the whole offseason that was like, oh, it's hard to transfer to the FBS. It's hard to, make that switch. It didn't feel that hard. Like that felt like an FCS game. They killed them. Like they were significantly
Yeah.
better than them every single drive. Like there was no worry at any point during that game that they were going to lose. There's no worry really at any point that it was going to be like within a couple scores. Like the longer it went on, the more it was like, oh, they're just way better than them at like every position. So I don't know. It's one that like I watched it and all of the doubts that I had that like, oh, it could be hard and they're going to have some growing pains turned into like, they're probably going to lose some games because like the Sun Belt East is hard. There should not be a game the rest of the season that JMU isn't competitive in. Like Kurt Signay talked about not being down multiple scores. Like this team is good enough to not lose a game by double digits, in my opinion. Doesn't mean they won't, but like I think the talent on both sides, if they're reasonably healthy, especially at quarterback, they should have a chance in every game.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what backs up that thought?
This guy.
Well, little graphic action here as we are live streaming for the first time. We're able to bring in outside statistics, outside graphics. This is from a really good guy on Twitter who does a lot of stats. You know his at name?
It's like Stats O War or something.
Yeah, I think that's it. But
Yeah, it's Stats
essentially
the letter O War.
And essentially what this graphic is saying is JMU was the 4th most dominant team this weekend.
Yeah, it's a net success rate, which I assume just meshes offense and defense in terms of like each play, basically. And yeah, they're up there with like an Alabama blowout over Utah State. Mississippi State was really good against Memphis, and Minnesota. I think that's New Mexico State that they dominated. Yeah. So I mean, it's basically anyone who had a blowout looked really good. And JMU's up there with some pretty big names as kind of an elite level performance.
Yeah, sure.
They were awesome.
I guess that brings us to our next point on this game, and you kind of sampled a little bit. Think 9 games. What are the expectations now moving forward after dominating at such a high level?
I don't think they'll actually win 9 games. I just feel like it's closer to that.
You said it, 4. Though. You said it.
That's true. I just feel like they're very good. And I also think we need to, like, at the same time, you kind of have to pump the brakes. Because, like, some JMU fans, I think we're getting, like, way too far on the other side, where it was like, which week is game day coming to campus? Or, like, a neighboring campus? Like, probably none of them. It doesn't, like, mean that they're this unstoppable force or anything like that. But they are a good football team that's playing really well. So they have some positives there. And the schedule is very hard, but it's also not like impossible. Like I think App State has legitimate defensive issues, which you saw when they gave up, 63 points to North Carolina. Like they scored 61, including 40 in the fourth quarter, because Carolina also stinks on defense. But App State gave up a gazillion points in their bowl game. They just gave up a bunch of points. So like Norfolk State's obviously a win. Texas State, I think they got blown out by Nevada, like blown out by a really bad Nevada team. It was like 42-14. So they're not good, and it's at home. That's essentially like a cupcake. So they should at least be 3-1 after those, even if they lose to Appalachian State. I think they can be competitive. Arkansas State's like a 50-point underdog. It's not actually that far. It's like 44 against Ohio State. Like they're fine. They're whatever. They're not like great. So neither of those West teams are that scary. Georgia Southern's going to get blown out by Nebraska probably this weekend. They're fine, but they're also transitioning from a triple option, which worked really well in week 1. I think they're playing an FCS team though. You got Marshall, which I do think Marshall's a pretty good team, so that'll be tough. But again, at home, where JMU's been fantastic over the years, that game is winnable. Louisville got trashed by Syracuse, 31-7 by Syracuse, Jack. Syracuse. They suck at football. Like, they're known for being bad at football. They added some UVA coaches who I'm pretty high on, so that's pretty cool. Good group of people there. Their offense might be better. Their running back's weak, but like Syracuse is not supposed to be good.
Isn't
So maybe
Louisville with
Louisville
Malik
sucks.
Cunningham too?
Yeah, he didn't do anything. His stats were not great. He was like 16 to 22 or something.
Isn't
He
he?
had a couple of picks.
He's supposed to be like an NFL caliber, like top 5 QB, right?
He's very good. I worry the program is maybe slightly a dumpster fire. So I don't know. Maybe they'll turn things around, but that game is like way less scary than it was. ODU, we can get into. I think Preston had this question. We can get into Preston Adams' question now, which was ODU Virginia Tech, and if ODU is actually good or if Virginia Tech is that bad. ODU won 20 to 17 in like a nail biter, even though Virginia Tech turned the ball over 5 times. So I think Virginia Tech kind of sucks, and ODU is not actually that good. But I think Virginia Tech sucks. So anyway, that game I don't think is impossible to win. And then Georgia State actually thinks to be pretty good, and Coastals look pretty solid in the early going. So it's not, there's not like a bunch of gimme games on here, but there also are games where like a week ago, I thought they might lose by like 10 plus. And now I'm like, oh, they could win that game.
Okay.
I was impressed.
I'm still thinking this team's around a 5-win team. Like the Middle Tennessee, that win made me feel really good, but still looking at the schedule, you're like, okay, so they're probably going to be 4-1 going into like that gauntlet. And still looking at it, like it's still an ACC school on the road. You're still going to have to either beat Marshall or Coastal or who's the other team?
Georgia State, ODU, or the other two at the end.
Georgia State or ODU, who just beat Tech. Like, I think it's still going to be tough, but I feel a lot better where the program's at, where I don't think they're going to get blown out by App anymore. I think they're going to be competitive against App State, but I think it's still going to be tough for them to pull out 5 or 6, 7, 8 wins type of thing. Because I think they're going to be an underdog in most of the games they play for the rest of the season.
I don't. Okay. I think they're going to be like it depends on the games. I think some like App State, they're an underdog. I could see them being favored though in 4 of their next 5.
I'll say this. I think they're favored in Texas State, Arkansas State.
I think they should be favored against Georgia Southern. I don't think Georgia Southern's good.
That's true. Okay, so they'll be favored in 3. Do you think they're
I mean,
favored in Marshall?
They could be
ODU?
5-1. If they're 5-1 going into that homecoming game, that place is going to be bananas.
That's true. Do you think they get a look for a bowl game and people just push across that they're transitioning period, or what do you think the expectations are on that?
I think, I think they should be let into the college football playoff. And if you're Jeff Bourne and you haven't, reached out about that to someone, then you're obviously, not doing your job.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, there was a really fun win, but in all seriousness, I don't think let me say it like this. The national spotlight is on us because we're the bright, new, shiny toy. It's not because we're the best we're not the best. We're not the next Alabama. I could not get that sentence out. Like, the reason there's so much spotlight and national coverage on us is because Centeio and Thornton just went off while everyone was focused on us. In 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, when the college football playoff picture's coming into more focus, and they release the college football playoff rankings, and we're not even eligible for a bowl game, I would not be surprised if the entire college football nation forgets who Todd Centeio and Chris Thornton is.
See, this
that was aggressive. That was an aggressive.
No, it's such a
finish that.
No, because it's such a realistically, the expectations for the entire season should not change. Like, it's still probably gonna, you would think, would still end up being a similar result. I think my thing is I think that they would still be the new shiny thing in 6 weeks. That's what excites me. It's like Norfolk State, they're going to win by a gazillion, and then they have a bye week. So we're talking like late September for the App game. So we have 17 more days of like ridiculous hype. that the fan base is going to go through, right? Because they're not losing to Norfolk State. So they have 17 more days from today of just this nonsensical hype where we're talking about Centeio like as a Heisman candidate, and we're talking about all this stuff and how great they are. That's definitely going to happen. And then if they're competitive in the app game, like if they win the app game, I think it's going to go insane.
Okay,
but
if
even
they
if
win
they're
the
just
app game, everything I just said is completely wrong.
But even if they lose that game, the fact that now we're talking like if they win is why the first win was so fun because they were so dominant. Then now it's like we're gonna beat App on the road, which is not all that realistic, but would obviously be very cool. But then Texas State, Arkansas State, Georgia Southern, I think you're getting. I mean, you could get all three, but maybe you get two of those three. The thing is, I just think they're better now. I think they're better than those three teams. I think they should win all three of those games. Doesn't mean they will, right? Because this is the same thing that happened in the first DiNucci year, where it's like if they play their best every week, and then they played way less than their best. And even last year at times, it was like if they play their best, and they like couldn't score for weeks on end in the red zone, couldn't score touchdowns, that is. So I don't know. I mean, obviously you shouldn't freak out too much over one game, but it has me on the verge of like unrealistic excitement, which is fun.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sending out a tweet to just a casual promotion tweet about this live stream as we're hitting it. But yeah, you hit all good points. You did put in our outline third wide receiver question mark. Who do you think?
Yeah.
Like it's Chris Thornton number 1, Reggie Brown number 2, and then if we want to pull up the stats from this last week, we can break it down a little bit further. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so kind of going off the third wide receiver and everything else, I feel like we got to do like a good cop, bad cop thing. Can you tell some people to calm down at least? Because I feel like there's, even myself, like there's a very good chance Middle Tennessee sucks.
Am I the voice? Okay, I'll take this down real quick as it's just like right in the middle of our faces. You want me to be the voice of reason? Do you want me to like throw cold water on the fire or on the
I think you have to a little bit because there's a.
Normally I'm you. Normally I'm the one that's like, this team's going to win every game. And you're like, I don't like with men's basketball. I'm always national championship. Here we come. And you throw the cold water on me and make me feel sad. Is that my role right now? Have the roles reversed?
I think it is.
Man, yeah. I'm going to be honest. Middle Tennessee, I did the deep dive on the stats. They weren't good. They lost a lot of production on the defensive side and didn't replace it with like the level of talent JMU did, because JMU lost over 50% of production in their defense, but they replace it with, really good athletes or people that have been in the program for a year or two. I mean, Middle Tennessee lost Reed Blankenship, who's in the NFL now, Gregory Gatt, who's a really solid player, and a few others. Their only good player was Ferguson, if we're being honest. Chase Cunningham showed flashes, but he showed flashes against Charlotte, against bottom feeder CUSA teams, which like if you put me in at quarterback, I would probably like look competent as a thrower of the football. So Middle Tennessee might not be good. With that being said, the defense showed a lot of life, a lot of, resolve, like every adjective you want to say. Will they beat App State? Probably not. Will they be competitive against an App State defense that just allowed like 70 million points against UNC? And is UNC, are we hyperinflating UNC? Yeah, UNC is not good this season. App State, I don't think will be as good as they have been in the past. But with all that being said, don't expect more than 5 wins because you're setting yourself up for failure. This is a transition year. The linebackers are still thin. The secondary is still young. And the defensive line will go up against an App State offensive line that's actually good. And the secondary will get tested.
This is fair. That's how I was thinking earlier in the week, right? And I was like, all right, you got to stay reasonable. You got to, know that it's just one game. Then I went back and watched it, and I was like, that's such a sad way to have to be a fan, even though it's like probably the smart thinking. It's like I want to go on Twitter and I want to yell at UVA fans, Virginia Tech fans, and be like, we're better at football than you.
Well,
I want to do that all year long.
That wasn't the question. Are we better than Tech and UVA? Of course we are.
If we win 5 games in the Sun Belt, we're not better than Tech and UVA.
But as of right now, right this instance, who's 1-0 and who's 0-1?
Well, UVA's 1-0. but they're a dog against Illinois.
Who's 1-0 against FBS competition?
There you go. ODU and us. And William and Mary. So all the juggernaut, Liberty too. All the monsters in the state. But no, it's like, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. I will say the thing that's going to make us excited is that they're going to have Norfolk State and then a bye and then App State. So it's like 17 days of like they haven't played App State and taken a loss yet. The other thing that the same thing concerns me is like Appalachian State will have played this thriller with North Carolina. They're going to Texas A&M this weekend, and then they play Troy. So like they're going to be way more tested for that game.
Yeah.
Like they're going to know some stuff about their team, where I think JMU has a lot of things it does not know because it didn't really play a single snap under pressure. And it probably won't until the Appalachian State game.
100%. I love all of that. Do you want to move to Norfolk?
Let me do the quick third wide receiver thing, if I may. My other concern.
Also, did I write Norfolk, Tennessee on the?
You did.
Out?
You did. So I put a little. But
okay, third wide receiver, hit me.
Chris Thornton was sweet. We haven't given him enough credit yet. He was unbelievable. What was it? 11 catches for 100 something and 3 touchdowns. And then Reggie Brown.
Ask me that question one more time. What was Chris Thornton?
Yeah, what were his stats? Oh,
boom.
11 catches, 145 yards, 3 touchdowns. They kind of missed him on a couple where he could have had more. He was just not someone they were capable of covering even a little bit. There was one play early in the game where Centeo threw it, and he threw it directly in front of a safety throw. I don't know if you remember this one, but he was showing a lot of trust in Thornton here. The safety just like kept drifting back. Thornton comes in front and snags it with his hands and like rips it away. And the safety was like beating himself up after the play. Pretty incredible. That he basically threw it directly to a safety who, if Thornton doesn't come in and grab it, intercepts it. And this guy made no effort to get the ball. And Thornton went in and like snagged it and ran away with it. So he was a killer. Reggie Brown was sweet. Nobody else caught the football, really. Ravenel had 2 for 15 and a touchdown. The touchdown was late in the 4th. Terrence Green had 1 catch for 10 yards. A couple of running backs got involved. But, like, I don't know. That's like a wide receiver 3 is probably a good thing at some point, especially when you like play a good team and they can put a few more bodies maybe over on Thornton's side.
Can I push back on that, though?
Yeah.
Did they need a wide receiver 3 in that game? Like, you were
probably
killing
not.
With Thornton. Yeah.
Probably not. And they probably didn't need a wide receiver 3 all of last season. It would just be fun to see someone step up. I think Ravenel is actually a guy who could step in, even Terrence Green. So they think they have them, which is a fair point. Yeah. But it was fascinating to watch the game back and just be like, oh, they just said, we're going to run the ball or we're going to throw it to Chris Thornton and Reggie Brown every single play. Middle Tennessee was like, well, we've got nothing.
Well, it was fun while it lasted, guys. Good job.
Yeah, we did our best. If only we had seen this Thornton guy on film. But they didn't.
Yeah.
Should we break down Norfolk State? As Kurt Signetti says, there's a test every week, Jack.
Do they win by 70 or do they win by 60?
This test is like coloring inside the lines, and the picture is just like a giant circle. It seems like a fairly easy test. You know? They're not good.
No. Sorry, my internet's being a little wonky, so I might be cutting in and out. But yeah, they're not good.
They're not good. They played Marshall and lost 55-3. So I think the only possibly entertaining thing is, I don't know if it's technically the transitive property. I think I said it was the newsletter we got in the outline. But it's, just comparing essentially to how badly Marshall beat them. That's literally the only thing that excites me about this. I wouldn't say it excites me.
I'm actually, I think our friend Dom brought it up about how trash the beginning of this schedule is. Like, you get so excited after Middle Tennessee, and then you go into Norfolk State, and then from there you're in a bye. Like, we're so high off of Middle Tennessee, we're not going to give a 2 craps about Norfolk State. and then you're telling me we have to wait for a bye, and then it's App State. Like, this probably works out better for the team, but as a fan, I wish we were still built. Like, wish this was a crescendo, not just like a staccato.
Yeah. I guess on the positive side, it could be a very, very fun end of fall. If they're like as good as we think they might be, could be cool.
It could also be really sad. I'm not trying to.
No, that's true. It could be devastating. Yeah.
But like, they could be, in all seriousness, 5-1 and not win another game.
Or they can go 10-1.
I mean, if they're 10-1, I think they beat App State. Like, if they're that the elite,
I can see that being their loss. You win out.
It is a tough game. Like, outside of it being App State, like, it's in Boone, and it's the first home game. Or do they play at Troy or home Troy?
They hosted UNC and then they host Troy, so it'll be the third home game, but it is already sold out.
So that's going to be the biggest stadium JMU's played in a stadium that cares about the game in a long time. Because JMU played at West Virginia, they played NC State. You're telling me those fans cared about that game?
Just complete North Dakota State. Just throwing them aside. No love for the Bison.
Dumb. No, how did I forget that? I'm so sorry.
I kind of like that, though, because we have officially announced ourselves as anti-FCS in this podcast now.
we disregard anything FCS.
We don't even remember that game. It was basically a scrimmage for JMU. They didn't care. They weren't up for it because it was the FCS level.
Yeah, that's why we throw a pick on the 2-yard line against North Dakota State in the final minutes again. Yeah, is there anything – I didn't even bother doing a stat breakdown because we have stats, like advanced stats we pull from like SP Plus, the ESPN FPI, things like that for all of our FBS teams. I didn't even bother doing one for Norfolk State. You know why? Because the stats aren't there. FBS doesn't have stats. Norfolk State's not good.
Yeah. I think SP Plus, they do like their little projected margins. I want to say Bill Connolly over at ESPN had JMU, and I think this is similar to like the line. It's anywhere between like 35 points and 40 points. So they're favored by like 5-ish touchdowns, which makes sense. Although I think they should be favored by more. I think that's probably a little low. Time. Let me look up the history. They played Norfolk State twice, and the two results, it was a 75-14 win in 2017. And then a 17-0 win that was canceled in second quarter maybe because of thunder, or I guess lightning. It wasn't because of thunder. They just heard rumbles and they're like, "Get out of here!"
With the announcers, the amazing announcers that they had.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Also worth noting, Snetti brought this up in his Tuesday press conference. Norfolk State only has 7 returners. Their quarterback's new. They have some size on the offensive line, but like it's not a great offensive line. I think their running back was all conference last season or like newcomer of the year, something along those lines. But I mean, at the end of the day, they have 7 returners from last year. So they lost a lot of newness on that team, a lot of inexperience. JMU was the better team when they were in the FCS. JMU is going to be the better team in this game in the FBS. I don't think there's too much outside of what we just said to break down this game any further.
No, I hope everybody stays healthy. And I think they should give them some good run, though. You know, like I think game reps, even against Norfolk State, are probably valuable given what App State will have in terms of reps playing North Carolina and Texas A&M and a conference foe. I think if you can keep Centeio and company like very, very confident going into the bye, that'll be a good thing.
Yeah, 100%. Around the Sun Belt, it was a nice little week for Sun Belt teams, whether it was them taking down Virginia Tech or it was a close loss against UNC. Anything else notable? Do you want to break down what you saw around the Sun Belt, or is that just a quick little recap suffice?
I think that's good. App State, I feel like, sort of whiffed on one. Not totally. They played fine, but like they were up 21-7 early, and then they gave up a sizable deficit, and then they scored 40 points in the fourth quarter. It was really just insane. But that's one. I thought they could have gotten that one against North Carolina, so that's a little disappointing. Texas State getting blown out by Nevada is a weird one. Coastal did pick up a nice win over Army, which I think was solid. But one thing I will say, I feel like JMU fans are super attached to like what the Sun Belt is doing, which is fair. But sometimes we're reading too much into these results where it's like Coastal beat Army. That's a good one for perception. That doesn't really mean anything for perception. Like, I don't think anyone at the national level is like, I respect the Sun Belt now, and they're essentially the P6 because Coastal defeated Army. Like our armed forces. Like, I don't think that's one that is actually going to change much. Georgia State was another one that like had a legit shot at South Carolina and kind of not necessarily choked, but they gave up 2 blocked punts for a touchdown in a game. 2. That's bad. You don't want to do
It's really
that.
bad.
Yeah.
Nope.
So they lost by 21, but they do host North Carolina this week in a game I actually think will be interesting. And since we're on the South Carolina topic, Antoine Wells, 7 catches for 55 yards in his South Carolina debut. So he leads the team in receptions.
Spencer Rattler also had some rave reviews about Antoine Wells as well, saying we need to get him the ball more. So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Also funny to think of the fact that they were in the FCS level with Antoine Wells and Chris Thornton after what they both did this weekend. Like, that's just a stupid duo.
And we were asking for a wide receiver 3 last season. They didn't even need a wide receiver 2, but they had one.
Yeah, they were loaded.
This is actually a really good topic real quick. Power 5s traveling to Group of 5 teams. Some talk on Twitter about how Power 5 shouldn't do it. It's bad for them. And I think it throws out the entire thought process or the entire thinking towards this is great for Group of 5s. This is great for local rivalries. This is great for all things like that. While it might not enhance a Power 5's overall resume, at the same time, if UNC, who's not a playoff team by any stretch of the imagination, if UNC went to Boone, they went to Boone and they picked up a tough road win, that helps a majority of Power 5's resumes.
It was interesting because it was mostly geared at the ACC because there's this idea that the ACC can still somehow catch up to the Big Ten and SEC, which is just remarkably dumb. But anyway, that's an idea that like is still out there, I guess. Shane Metland made a really good point. He tweeted that like it's not always financially doable for some of those ACC teams, like to schedule, like to just buy G5 teams at home. So you can do a 2-for-1 where you have 2 home against the, Sun Belt team, and then you have 1 on the road. Some of it in North Carolina, I believe the state politicians either strongly encouraged and or mandated some of these games, like NC State at ECU. So there was like state politics playing a role, which is sweet. It'd be kind of funny if Virginia politicians did a similar thing. But like Virginia Tech going to ODU, there's this idea that like they shouldn't do that because they need to save face for the conference. Just don't suck at football. Like, don't throw 4 interceptions and give away a fumble and play horribly, and then you wouldn't have any perception issues. Someone who was in my reply is like, oh, I don't know about this because like people give Alabama credit for beating cupcakes. No, they give Alabama credit because they're better than everyone else, and like every player on their team is an NFL draft pick.
And they don't just beat cupcakes; they demolish cupcake. Like, it's like UNC had the opportunity to demolish App State, but UNC didn't demolish App State. They were in a close one. And you know what that means? UNC is not a college football playoff team. Alabama is, because if Alabama played App State, they would have won by 40.
But they shouldn't go there. It's like, maybe their defense shouldn't allow 40 points in a quarter if you want national perception to respect you. There's this like idea that you can just like wiggle your way into perception. And it's like, no, like Alabama and Georgia are better than everyone. It's not because of talking heads on ESPN. Georgia beat Oregon by like 50. Like, who in the ACC is doing that? Is it North Carolina? No.
It's not Clemson.
No one's doing it because the league's not that good. They're like the middle of the ACC and borderline sometimes the top is on par with like the top of the Sun Belt. Like, I feel like that's what we learned. North Carolina is a middling ACC team, and they were in a battle with Appalachian State. because the teams are equally good at football. Like that's
Yes.
like ODU, I think, is worse than Virginia Tech and just got some fortunate turnover luck. But like Virginia Tech, play better if you want that to not be the result. Like just play better. South Carolina beat Georgia State. It was at South Carolina, sure, but like they won the game and they blocked 2 punts and won the game. They did what they needed to do to win. Like you can come up with all these excuses of like, well, the ACC needs to get up with the SEC. The way to do that is not to not schedule road games at G5s. It's to be better at football. I don't know. It was really annoying. And it was also just like this weird, felt like kind of condescending thing where it's like, why would the ACC even consider playing some trash like Appalachian State? It's like, because Appalachian State's like an equally good team. Why would NC State go to East Carolina? It's like, I mean, they should have lost because they're not that much better than it. Like, NC State's not a playoff team. Like, ACC network people will probably tell you on some shows, like throughout the season, if NC State keeps winning, that NC State is like a playoff contender. And it's a lie. Don't believe them because it's stupid. Like, if anyone is, it's Clemson. It's just so annoying. Like the stuff where it's like, oh, you can't schedule them. You shouldn't schedule them because we're above them. It's like, I don't think you understand when like the power leagues form, you will be more on par if you're North Carolina football with Appalachian State than you will be with Ohio State. Like it's already the case. You're not competing with them because you're not good.
These soapboxes are some of my favorite things in the world.
It's just irritating, you know? It's also fun, like for all the people in the region.
Yeah. It's also fun for the kids at App State and ECU who get to go to this game. Like, if there was FCS, so it never would have happened. But like, say JMU was FBS when we were there, and Tech came into town.
Right.
That would be so fun. And I think people just miss the human aspect of sports too. Like, not only does this help the students, this helps the local economy. This gets everyone up. It breathes fresh air into these programs. And then not to mention, these kids played each other in high school. Like, there's that rivalry too. Or like, they knew each other growing up. They played on the same Pee-wee teams. Like, there's so much to it where people are like, this is below us. No, it'd be below you, Joe Schmo, who works for the national media, but it's not below every local person in that area. Like, it's just such an insane take that doesn't take in like the world. It's such an insulated take of like, well, if we want to be the best, we have to play the best. Yeah, but Alabama doesn't want to go to UNC because you think you're so great that you're only scheduling a home and home. Like, UCF couldn't even get home and homes when they were at the pinnacle of their quote unquote domination. Like, if you think you're the best, the best don't think you're the best. You got to play who you can play and make it fun.
Why do you like college football? There's a question I'll ask you.
I love it for like what it's just fun, man. Like, it's the students, the pageantry, the coaches, like everything about it is fun.
Yeah,
that's a terrible answer, but I think
that's a good answer. It's like it's awesome. The fans are incredible, right? It's like the atmospheres are so different than you get at like an NFL game, which are still some pretty good atmospheres, but it's just like so unique to each town. Where I feel like in NFL games, that's not always the case. Like maybe you'll see like weather with like Bills fans jumping on tables and stuff, but like the variety from town to town in college football is so cool. And like seeing Appalachian State cram 40,000 people into a stadium is awesome. And there's so many things on Twitter that are like, this is huge for the ACC's perception. Why do I care about the ACC's perception? Truly, why should like a Virginia Tech fan or a UVA fan, why should they care about the ACC's perception? Like if the conference goes, or if the college football goes to a 12-team playoff, what it seems like it's going to do in 2026, and you have the top 6 highest ranked conference champions get in the playoff, like you're going to have some sort of access, even if the ACC isn't considered like the same as the Big Ten. It's just weird. It's like, so you're supposed to care more about the ACC's overall perception than you are about like a really fun Friday night game against a regional team where you might actually know other students who go to that school. So if I'm a 20-year-old Virginia Tech student with friends at ODU, I'm supposed to be like, oh yeah, we shouldn't play you guys, and if we do, it's only at home because of our perception. So that maybe then we'll play Rutgers instead because of our perception.
It's also hilarious that like it was coming from ACC people, and the ACC has missed out on this whole conference realignment thing, and it's being left in the dust. And there's a very strong chance the Big 12 is going to leapfrog the ACC as the Big 12 starts targeting West Coast Pac-12 teams to try and poach from them. Like the ACC is getting lapped. Your perception, no matter what you do, isn't good. If Clemson has a good year, they're going to the SEC, and you're left with nothing. So, like, let's get that straight. The ACC isn't this national conference like it once was. So your perception can go out the door.
And the final point that I'll make that bothers me too is where it's like, oh, it's just not worth it for the Power 5 team. Well, it depends on who the Power 5 team is, because like the more that we have analytics with like ESPN's FPI, and obviously still the Sagard ratings and all that stuff, but even like SP Plus, I feel like we're getting more and more like power rating systems created by like the major entities like ESPN that people are actually using to compare teams. So like when you look at that, the win at Appalachian State, if you're North Carolina, like at the end of the year, that's probably better than your road win, assuming they get it at Duke. Like, why would you play it? Well, it's better than some of your conference wins. Like, it's better than the home win against Georgia Tech will be. There is benefit to it, like in terms of obviously the regional game, but then like the win at Appalachian State at the end of the season is probably a good win.
It also, this might just sound redundant, and it's essentially what you just said, but just to flip it on its head, that win is also better than winning it at home. Like if you're so gung-ho, we don't travel to G5s, like that win's better on the road than it would have been at home, as is any win.
And if you're Carolina, isn't like your number one goal just to like win your division in the ACC, and like because they're not making the playoff as we've talked about, so you'd think you want your team prepared to go and make a run at your division, the Coastal, and playing at Appalachian State. I'm going to be honest with you, that's a more hostile environment than playing at Virginia in November. So like. I think that's like it preps your team. Like there are actual benefits to it that I thought were kind of surprising that nobody was talking about. It's just like, oh, they almost lost, so this was dumb. It's like, no, that's a very weird way to look at that.
Yeah. And last, but certainly not least, it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Sunbelt Weekly Pick'em. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, and I don't think you do either, but
I did well. I know I did well.
Show off. All right.
But let's get to it this week.
I can't open it. I want to be frank. I can't open the Sunbelt schedule right now because of my internet.
I have them up.
I'm going to need you to do this for us.
Do we want to save Jamie to the end, or we want to lead because their game is so bad?
Let's lead with JMU.
Okay, JMU Norfolk State, Saturday, 4 o'clock on ESPN 3, which is different than ESPN Plus. So, who you got?
You need a cable subscription to watch this game. You need a cable subscription to watch JMU win this one 75-7.
75-7. I'll say they win it 59-10, which I think is what I put in the newsletter and hopefully matches with what I said. But also, if you have like an internet thing, I believe YouTube TV is like a partner with them, which I have, and I would be able to get ESPN3. So it's like cable plus those things as well. All right.
Yep.
Arkansas State, Ohio State.
Arkansas State, Ohio State. Give me the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I will tell you on that. The spread right now is 44.5 points. So
I would
odds makers like the Buckeyes.
State. Yeah,
they're the
Ohio
favorite.
State even with the point. Yeah, of course they're the favorite.
Southern Miss plays at Miami. Southern Miss had a heartbreaking loss at Liberty. I thought they were going to win that one, end up losing in overtime. But they're playing out Miami. That's a big one.
I'm going to go Miami. I've bought into the Miami hype. I think with NIL and everything, they're going to be a national contender here soon. I like what Mario Cristobal did at Oregon. He beat Ohio State. People forget. Oregon beat Ohio State at the beginning last year. This year, Oregon got absolutely mollywopped in week one. Post Cristobal. Cristobal basketball is going to do good things in Miami. It's going to start with it. Will not start. Pick up the win this week.
Yeah, I think Miami wins that game. They're 25-point favorites. We don't have a ton of like highly competitive games this week necessarily. So Miami, that should be a pretty easy money line pick. Next up, North Carolina. They're going on the road again, stir the pot to a Sun Belt team. They're playing at Georgia State. Shout out to UNC for just like running through the Sun Belt.
You were breaking in and out. My internet is really on its last leg here. I'm going to go Georgia State takes down UNC. UNC's defense is so bad.
Dude, I love this pick. I'm also taking Georgia State, 7.5-point underdogs. Hammer that spread. 2 blocked punts against South Carolina. I could not think of an easier thing to fix. It's like a week to fix punt protection. That's perfect. They can do that. They ran for 200 yards against South Carolina. They held South Carolina to 79 rushing yards. They picked off Spencer Rattler twice. So I love them in this one. I think Carolina's probably worse than North Carolina's probably worse than South Carolina at the end of the day. So I think Georgia State at home as well. They upset the Tar Heels, pick up this win, and ACC fans are like, why would they go there? All right.
Love it.
We got another huge showdown. Yep. South Alabama at Central Michigan. Central Michigan is a 5-point favorite.
Central Michigan.
That's a good question. I think South Alabama could be fun this year. So I'm going to say South Alabama goes on the road and picks up a win.
All right. Next up.
Marshall has a big showdown at Notre Dame. They're 20.5-point underdogs.
I'm going to go with the Fighting Irish, and I think you are too.
I will, although I don't know. I feel like they could hang in this. Yeah, I was not overly impressed by all of what Marshall did against Norfolk State. So I think Notre Dame played pretty well against Ohio State. They'll win that one. All right, Appalachian State on the road at Texas A&M, 19.5-point dogs.
A&M with ease. A&M's a national title dark horse. People are talking about them. Jimbo Fisher's really good. They're a really good program. App State just allowed 60-plus points against UNC. Give me A&M.
Yeah, worried about App State's defense. I like A&M there as well. We got some snoozers the rest of the way, so I'll save a couple of the fun ones for the end. So Gardner-Webb, Coastal Carolina.
Coastal.
Yes, Coastal. Eastern Michigan at Louisiana.
Eastern
Louisiana. Michigan. Okay, Louisiana is an 11.5-point favorite.
Oh,
I'll take
Louisiana.
I'll take Louisiana as well. Alabama A&M at Troy.
Troy.
Also taking Troy. Florida International. This game is so bad. Florida International against Texas State. Texas State, which just got smoked by Nevada, is a 14-point favorite.
Texas State's a favorite?
14-point favorite.
I'm going to go FIU with the Fighting Gunner Holmbergs.
Is that where he went?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I'm taking Texas State. If Vegas says they're a 14-point favorite, given how bad they are, I will gladly take them. All right. Georgia Southern. Clay Helton in the Fighting Georgia Southern boys. Go to Nebraska. Kind of a crappy Nebraska team, but they are 23.5-point dogs.
So Nebraska, hear me out, lost week 0 in Ireland, set themselves up for the ultimate trap game. I was all over North Dakota, like plus 35. North Dakota didn't win, of course, but they covered that with ease. Nebraska looked lackluster. Give me Nebraska to win, but I'm taking the points. Not Nebraska. I forgot who they're playing. So
Georgia Southern. Yeah, Nebraska looks like crap, but I'll take Nebraska to win. I don't think they're. I don't know. Scott Frost, if they lose this game, is like immediately out of a job. So I'll say that they win. Yeah. And then we have Nichols versus UL Monroe.
I'm gonna go with the FCS upset here. No, I'm not.
I'll take UL Monroe. What a horrible game. That's disgusting. And last one that I've saved for us is a somewhat exciting game. I should say some of the others. But ODU is playing at East Carolina. Mike Houston. They should have beaten NC State, but they didn't have a competent kicker. So they lose that one. But ECU is a 12.5-point favorite over the Monarchs, who just beat Virginia Tech.
I'm going to go ECU because I think they're trending upwards. They had a really good showing against NC State. If it wasn't for the missed field goal, who knows, or missed extra point, I should say, who knows how that game finishes. Oh, yeah, that is a bad day for the kicker. I'm actually interested to hear who you pick, though.
I've got ECU, and I think ECU covers the 12.5. Like, I think they might kill them.
Okay. You think
So
Virginia Tech's that bad, ODU's here, and ECU's
here? I don't think they can bank on 5 turnovers, and it's on the road. I feel like it's a perfect storm, letdown week. They're not going to force a bazillion turnovers. They're not actually that good. I still think they're decent and getting better, but they're not. I don't know. I like what Mike Houston's doing at ECU. I think they're actually pretty competitive. So I will take ECU, and that's everything for Sunbelt Pick'em. Perfect.
Well, I think our first ever live stream of the JMU Sports News podcast went off fairly well. So a few internet problems on my end. We'll get those figured out. We'll be back next week. Much like punt protection, we know it's a simple fix for next week. There's nothing wrong with it. Any closing thoughts on this week's matchup against Norfolk State or anything else you want to leave our listeners about Middle Tennessee?
I just want to make sure we didn't miss any questions, but I don't believe that we did.
Well, the JMU Sports Blog guys asked why their I think it was more in jest, though.
Yeah, I don't know if they need a serious answer for their audio problems, but hey, we're having some internet issues, so if you're a JMU related podcast, you obviously have some tech difficulties.
Yeah. Well, for Ben and Conlon, my name is Jack Fitzpatrick. We hope you guys enjoyed the first edition of the JMU Sports News podcast. Going along the bottom is all the things happening at Three Notch'd. They are a proud sponsor of this podcast, along with Bet Online. Promo code BELIEVE50, BELIEVE50. Check that out. And also check us out on Patreon, JMU Sports News. Next week we'll be on Twitter, YouTube, live streaming, same time, same place. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.